Hello people, Linker here, and this guide is probably everything you've been looking for in AFKArena. So today we're going to talk about it. Alright, so after that hot audience retention intro, let's just have an unscripted talk. Arty released a huge guide after the video we made just a little bit earlier today, and now we're going to just talk about the different sets that are in it. Basically, it's breaking down all the viable endgame sets, their substitutions, what you want to invest into. Let's just have a good overview of it. Obviously, link is going to be in the description. Thank you, Arty, so much for this. I'll give my personal commentary of it, because I think you'd like to know how they fit into those different comps, but absolutely wonderful work. So let's get right into it. And the first set is Thoran Cheese. Arty, did you really have to put that first? We're people of culture on this channel. Yeah, so these are going to be endgame viable campaign sets. Some of these are PvP viable too. Thoran Cheese isn't as much. The variant of Thoran Cheese that works has to be Talene, Flora, Athalia, and we talked about the different subs. We used Tassie, we used that in Heroes of Asperia to really counter burst. Anyways, how did this work? You do the Thoran ultimate, you displace those enemies, you give him energy support, and then he kind of does the ult, takes the damage, reflects it back onto enemies. It's very good if you're running into those aggressive enemies. It's one of those things that I didn't see mentioned onto it. But as Arty says, works at the theoretical infinite level deficit because you're working off of the enemy damage. However, if you're going into enemies that are not going into this, it's going to take a while. And what I personally dislike about this set is the fact that essentially, once you optimize it, there's zero thought to do. It's just really like a robot. Like there's a set of things that you need to do to see where the carry is, to kind of test the displacements, and then it's all about macros and retries. It used to be way more retries than we do right now because, as you know, signature items were introduced, furniture was introduced. Thoran really enjoyed both of those alongside tree. By the way, do not put too many tree levels into Thoran if you want to make him work because it reduces the haste. The tank tree does not help Thoran much. However, Thoran himself really enjoys any piece of an investment. The allies that he goes with do not need it, so the displacement allies are going to be allies that kind of group up the enemies so that they're in the range for the Thoran ult. We see the Peepa core, Coral core that Ainz was talking about. We see Kelthor, even Skreg can work, even though that's slightly a hot take on Arty. Anyways, energy support, anything like that can work. Obviously, 2 Hypogeans is one that I think was a little bit missed here. 2 Hypogeans can really work well together with the Hypogean faction bonus to get Thoran more energy every time he gets hit or any energy that he does generate. However, very good breakdown of the set. As you can see, on budget, you can run it with Rowan and a bunch of any of these just even at a low investment. We talked on various podcasts. Flora sorcery can proc while Thoran is still doing the thing, so various allies will still be able to act while enemies aggro Thoran, and they can work in tandem. So stuff like Kelthor, stuff like Talene that can revive, stuff like Flora that is just indifferent, anything like that can work with Thoran. Next, we're going to talk about Lucretia, a much better variant of cheese in my opinion. By the way, if you're curious what cheese is, there's no one definition. The general one I use is any set that relies on your own set getting hurt to work. So Thoran needs enemies to hit into him to reflect the damage back. Lucretia needs the allies to die. So the investment for this one, and the reason Lucretia is going to be so strong, is that once you got one Lucretia, all of these are completely optional. You can even go with a bunch of level 1s as Arty mentions over here. So, Lucretia, the way she works, allies die, she gets the bonus, spirals out. She really enjoys stuff that gives her buffs even after it dies. So think, like I see over here, I really like Loisen is here, I really like. I don't know if it's sub DPS, maybe he's talking about helping the DPS, I'm not sure. CC, anything like that, but very, very flexible set. This one not onto aggressive enemies, anything that Lucretia works well against. Lucretia is a dodge tank, she gets the early spiral, so if she can burst key enemies down and keep up the dodge, she'll be able to carry entire sets. And this is partially why I recommend gazing her second. She's incredibly strong, even viable in PvP. Me and Arty in agreement here, as you see in the notes. This is one of the strongest compositions in the entire game. I highly suggest gazing for Lucretia up to twins, an effectively low investment 5th formation. Power manipulation is rather impactful for Lucretia due to barricade triggers. And lastly, in the very end game, you see her in 5 pole where the enemies are really grouped for her. The enable is kind of like the displacement section, which is why you can often see her with stuff that is not as mentioned here, like Kelthor and stuff like that is also viable, but virtually so many things are viable with Lucretia. You're going for whatever. Next, we have the Gwyn Comp. Gwyn falling out of grace recently into the status of a 6th set, but we do see a lot of things working in favor of Gwyn whenever you see those static backlines. So, you people that watch from my top 5 formation hero page, do not sleep on Gwyneth. I know she's a 6th set, but if you see a static backline and they're starting to appear in chapter 36, use your Gwyneth. Don't forget, Gwyneth and Arthur are going to be key because the Arthur buff onto Gwyneth and the Draglia just works so great in tandem. But we see a lot of different buffers that can work. The key ones you're going to keep an eye for is going to be Rosaline, very common in that set. Rain, also very common in that set. A lot of other things that are kind of niche, so you see Numisu. I personally really like Lorsan, but there's also these like other ones. Personally, Cecilia is the one I prefer the most because Rowan is very contested, you gotta pay attention. Also, a lot of you don't move gear around, so Rosalind follows Rowan. That might be the reason you're stuck in King's Tower for light bears, by the way. If you move the Rowan gear so that the Gwyneth has the highest power, she really based off of power. If you give her a little bit of extra power, her lockdown can be exactly what you need to clutch it. Cecilia, another niche falling out of grace, but do not sleep on it. The little circle she does, really good for those static backline that Gwyneth disables. And a sad thing is to see Zafrael here. Zafrael stealing her slot in Burst, now slightly outclassing her in Invade comp that we're going to talk about in just a second. Invade. So the core is going to be Skreg. Skreg's furniture is so incredibly strong. Now what you can use with Skreg is virtually your choice. A lot of people like Maulers because various Maulers like Patrana, Drez, Tidus, all of those are a little bit outclassed in those other sets and go very well both for faction bonus and the furniture bonus with Skreg. But Athalia, incredibly prominent. Lucretia depends on how you're using it. Flora can actually variably pivot this set into stall. So lastly, you have the various enablers. These are going to be ones that you see in all kinds of sets. Do not sleep on Anarchy. Another thing I like that Arty kind of mentions here as well, we do not see Kren here. Kren is in the multi-fight. Kren does need a little bit more experimentation, but he's incredibly prominent when based on stuff that pushes the enemy forward, and Skreg Invade can really pull off that set pretty well, so we'll be looking forward to see how that works. However, two variants of this set. One, the instant aggression, you're talking about Satrana and Athalia just knocking over enemies, stuff with Kren, and on the other one you have CC and Stall, stuff like Orthos, Flora, Talene, all of those also go to decide on the fight. Cassie, another hero that teleports away to those enemies, can really pull off incredible things. Consider Skreg. While we don't see the usage rise up quite yet, I think this is one of the sets that F2Ps will discover, because all of the viable F2P option stuff that you can really have even as early as chapter 33, like Tidus, Satrana, all of those are really strong in this set and are possibly able to push some min power, especially if they don't encounter very heavy enemy aggression. So Classic Disrupt is one set that kind of fell out of grace. While Arty calls this Classic Disrupt, our name here on the channel is going to be Celesgraveborn. Celesgraveborn, well, a lot of these are specials and Graveborns, you see various other cores, can really enjoy anything that does just disrupt the enemy. This is going to be a careless composition most of the time. These are going to be a lot of disruptive heroes that work together to land a lot of CC. This can really help you if you're in those lower levels. I'm talking about chapter 32, 33. But it's falling out of grace in the very later levels, because if the enemies break out of that lockdown for even 2-3 seconds, you don't have the Godcomp behind you for like energy cycles, they will actually slap this set. But do not sleep on it, because sometimes it's exactly what you need. When you face those very heavy enemy carry stuff like Feral disabling all kinds of different enemy ults, not letting you attack, buffed on the furniture recently too, is going to be incredibly strong. Now think about the slow synergy. If you use Alna, for example, in this set, you can do Wukong that slows with the pole, you can do Orthos that slows in an area, Feral that slows with the new buff furniture, as well as the debuffs on top of Flora. This set will have just so much control. Very important to remember, recently stuff that enables things stuff like Silas and Talene has become crucial for this set, and this is why it's seen less and less in campaign. It's less well in PvP, the situation is not the best for this set. What I like about it, it runs defensive Thoran, so absolutely like that, and it's a high skill ceiling set, so if you know how to mix and match the different enemies to your composition, if you're able to play out the win condition, this is one of those sets that will really help those skilled players kind of rank up. Next, let's talk about Godcomp, energy cycle, whatever you want to call it. Just incredibly strong team, very flexible, likes the fragmentation. I don't know what Rosaline's doing in sub DPS. I think this is enhanced sustain. Gives more energy or lockdown. But now you see Aziz, Rowan twins. Recently, you were even able to see some sets without twins in them. Stuff like Aziz, Rowan, Mehira, Khazard, that I personally would still consider Godcomp. Some people have other names for it. We'll see it in the continuation of this guide. What heroes do you want to have for this one? You want to have Aziz, you get it from the Challenger store. You want to get the twins, it's the strongest set in the game. And you want to have Rowan. And then you can slap on it either Ainz and Albedo if you've got those incredibly strong set. One of the best sets in the game. I would argue it's even core if you're not using Ainz somewhere else. We'll talk about that viable alternative in a moment. Or alternatively, you can use the traditional Godcomp, just do Tassie and something like Talene or Source or anything to that effect, and just enjoy the carry power of this enhanced sustain lockdown that you get. Really, really strong. The budget version does sub Aziz for Feral. This is something we've seen used for a lot of time in those earlier chapters while you acquire the twins and Aziz, especially for those that got Athalia in chapter 27. But keep all these heroes in mind. I really, really like it myself. I think in campaign, using stuff like Wukong is a little bit more tricky here. I would actually consider using Athalia as a carry, not just for the counter heal. I would consider other heroes here, but nonetheless, really, really strong. Zafrael is one hero that can work with this decently. Odin and Peepa, by the way, I've seen Portal Core work here, and Fox is one hero people sleep on. His single target CC can freeze a hero like Tassie for another set, and sometimes just the debuff clear that he gives your team is really, really prominent. He also gains haste, which allows him to ult faster, but obviously the queen of energy regeneration has to be Mehira for a signature item. Moving forward, because we've talked about that team a lot, by Daimon on that if you haven't, is going to be Izold. I don't agree with it. I mean, I guess it's Izold Cheese because he relies on getting damage for the signature item, but yeah, Izold. High skill ceiling, you gotta know your Izold matches. More on that in the Izold hero analysis, but basically, frontline Izold is better than people give it. It engages very fast. 2 heroes are faster than that in the game, which is going to be Estrilda and Naka. But other than that, Izold frontline is very, very strong. Izold backline enjoys tanks. Stuff like Alna, stuff like Thoran and Graveborn Tower. The Daimon I don't see mentioned here, but obviously in campaign you're going to use Daimon for a diff like that. As for CC, anything works. Really, everything is game. You see stuff like Rowan here that you'd probably use in other sets, so you could sell it from some things that are not mentioned here. Sometimes, for example, Kelther, if you're not using them on Thoran sets, and you can actually work here decently, but it's ultimately up to you. Basically, the way to use Izold, and do watch that video if you want more information, know what Izold is matching into, plan for him to kind of scale out, and you'll see him come back. He did fall in chapter 34 usage, but he is rising back in 35, 36, 37. So Izold Cheese, a very strong set. You will need the investment to the plus 30, plus 3. If you get the 9 out of 9, it's actually faster than people think because he can multi-stack the hyperdemic healing. But I digress, very strong set. Check out the video if you want more information on that. And don't overlook Kelther. Anyways, Ainz. So the idea with Ainz and Albedo I think is pretty crucial but not necessary. It's just the hero himself is strong enough. Any kind of investment into Ainz work. As Arty says here correctly, Albedo does not need the furniture, but any other investment is needed. Even the dimensional gear, Ainz really enjoy the scaling. The current strongest stream in the game for pushing single stages. I get why Arty does not put twins here, because the idea is that you use the Godcomp as a separate set, but then again I would expect Rowan and Aziz not be here too. So yeah, unless I'm blind, twins are nowhere to be found here, and he definitely enjoys those. But other than that, really accurate over here. I like what I'm seeing. Just anything that can buy Ainz some time and utility. Brutus and Alna with the immunity, Thoran with the resurrect. Mizatha is a really strong tank. Feral sometimes. I like Numisu. Yeah, I see Numisu here too. Sometimes Joker is able to pave some damage. Queen is another one I think is a little bit too niche. I wouldn't even include it here, but a very strong set. Don't sleep on Ainz. If you've got an Ainz, just virtually anything will work. We did make that one video where we showed some substitutes. For example, Arthur is a good substitute to Albedo if you don't have it. Helene is a nice niche support that can sometimes be substituted and substitute twins on the Godcomp. And there's a lot of different variants you really gotta pay your attention to. I think Arty broke it down very well here, so I'll just let you read that and kind of move Forward, burst comp. Now, a lot of these are funny because you say, all right, there's 15 sets per campaign. Can I use all 15? But a lot of them intertwine. You see stuff like Lucretia here, for example, Gwyneth here, for example. Gwyneth used less, by the way, in campaign. This is an important caveat. Gwyneth is more often used in PvP as a Zafral sub, but anything on burst kind of works. And the core team, I think, is going to be what we see at the multi-fight variant or the optimal investment variant. So this here is actually going to be the PvP set. In PvE, Gwyneth not as often seen. Zafral is usually seen here. I personally think he's optimal. He would be better than Gwyneth, but I'm really nitpicking here. Another hero that you do see sometimes, for example, would be Gorvo. I don't think Gorvo is here, but Gorvo's key CC is really, really crucial sometimes. Sub DPS Kaz is something you less often see in campaign, it's more PvP, so I think it kind of got conflated over here, but nonetheless, an incredibly strong set. The idea is that if you match into those weaker enemies, you're able to really lock down them and dent holes before they're able to react. So Burst is one of the top 5 sets, in my opinion even one of the top 3 sets to use in campaign. An incredibly strong team that bases itself off of Aaron and Laika. I personally like Aaron and Zoroth as the core, but you could even run it budget as this version over here that many of you know, like the recognized core of Aaron and Sophia. Sophia, by the way, used for the pyramid. As time passes on, she stops being a carry, so don't over-invest into Sophia. And if you like all this advice we're talking about, definitely like, subscribe, consider joining. I'm making this video scriptless, so it's more of a live kind of thing where I just kind of talk to you. It's not a Twitch vid because we've had a lot of those, but I really appreciate just all the growth in the channel recently. Definitely check out Arty. Came out with this awesome guide. I looked at it a little bit ahead of time, so I knew it's really, really fire, but I didn't need to because Arty is really amazing. Featured him on the channel a lot recently. Really awesome to see any content coming from that guy. Next up, we have 5-pole. So 5-pole is kind of an interesting competition to burst. The 5-pole is the more of like the earlier version. The idea is like Aaron Skriath is the core, but a lot of these are going to be similar. Essentially, I would move anything between these two. I feel like any other kind of play on it is a little weird. Theowen, I guess I already saw that. I don't know that if that's used. Queen seems super odd here to me. I never saw that work. Cassus I know works with the shield, so this is an important A&B caveat I don't think was made here. The idea is that you do Cassus with Flora. These two have to go together. Anyways, the idea is basically the same as Burst. You just dent massive holes in the enemy team. You do Aaron Skriath. Now, one of the reasons that Aaron is so strong is that he can fit with so many different things. Look at everything that's here. Look at everything that's here. It's really, really incredible. And while I appreciate already slotting in defensive Thoran in this set, I personally never saw it used as well. But I do like seeing the Gorvo back. I do like seeing, by the way, the budget no more or the alternative 9 out of 9 no more. Regardless, the investment, as Arty says here, Skriath has to be 3 out of 9. Aaron really likes the 30. One of those heroes, if you do him very early, if you're watching this channel and you're wondering what's a good hero I can invest in chapter 15 and use in chapter 35, Aaron. Anything invested into that guy, you're absolutely gonna enjoy. Up next, we have Daimon core. So Daimon, just incredibly strong into tanks. We made the Daimon hero analysis. We made the burst overview team too, but virtually anything goes with Daimon as long as you can tank. Alna as being his key ally Thoran. Defensive Thoran is the one we like to see. Hendrik is something that A&B tested. I don't know 100% how it works. I know that it does work, I just don't know how. And then we see the Brutus. Sometimes, by the way, anything that can be tanky, even heroes like Arthur can work very well. I've seen mean-powered KT at 600 and forward just using Arthur with this guy. But virtually any kind of utility, CC tanks, and energy support, as we said in this video, works. I really like the breakdown that Arty did here. So I would consider moving my mascot over to the tankiness, because if you're doing it, you probably want to run it in somewhere that's actually tanky. So, very, very strong hero. Able to just completely pave his way through very tanky teams, very versatile, but does not go well into burst. So you will want to have another team when you approach chapter 31, but hands down I think the strongest team that you could grab coming up to chapter 31 if you want to be strong at the end game still. Do not sleep on the Daimon plus 30. I know Arty's going to say here plus 20, but the plus 30 gives Daimon a shield factor reduced by a factor of 3. So the shield downtime is going to be reduced by a factor of 3, making you much less susceptible to all these burst enemies that sometimes can kind of throw him off his guard. It's going to make him much more versatile. It's going to make him work with less support into more sets. Daimon 30. Get it. 9 out of 9 is not very good. And no bad matchups, I disagree. I think that burst matchups are very bad for this guy, but he's incredible nonetheless, and he can pave all the way up to chapter 31. Khazard Wilders is an interesting one because this is something we've seen come back and forth from LC. We've even seen Olmus here. I was wondering if I'm gonna see an Olmus here. Regardless, I usually don't choose Sassy enemy here. I usually do both. But anything that can regenerate energy, just kind of give an Apogean bonus, and you just kind of do the CC core. If you've seen the channel, you probably know how this works. I really like this set in multi-faction. I really like this set into King's Tower, into campaign. Personally, I always find myself using them with Thoris. I don't really know why, just the fight kind of goes on for long enough. But yeah, these three are going to be incredibly strong. I know Khazard is a luxury hero, but if you get him, it's going to be pretty good. And I want to give a note, anything that works with CC like that, virtually anything that works well with CC is going to also enjoy like the Solis score. So if you have, for example, a mage that you still want to make work, like Solis, for example, that's kind of niche, it's going to be virtually the same core, virtually the same teams. If you see the budget team over here, this is going to be working with virtually any mage in that slot. If you're talking Solis, she'll enjoy that great. The multified variant, I dislike the Namor on the back because usually you want Namor on the 9 on the 9. If you use 3 on the 9, you probably have something better to use. However, optimal investment stuff like Tassie and Pipa, leeching off the Tassie ult with those wilders is going to be pretty interesting. This is the only set where almost can possibly work. These are all niches. Basically, I'm just kind of picking. Khazard obviously really like the plus 30 because it gives him a longer team CC. I should really grab myself a Khazard plus. I'm working on it as we speak. Next up, we have the Stall. So Stall, these are one of the teams that merges very well if you go all the way back here. I'm sorry for the spastic movement, but Red, for example, can really go with Stall. Anything like Classic Disrupt can really pivot into Stall. So these teams, they're kind of like different points that you just kind of draw in between. Like I could take another team and kind of draw a line between a few. Like I could say, yo, Khazard Wilders and Khazard passive CC with Arthur. Wait, did Arty not put Arthur here? What? Where's the Arthur? Is he saying this is ultimately like the only place where you use Khazard with Arthur is Gwyn set? Is Khazard really like straight up? I've even seen Belinda. Yo. I mean, that could be a whole other team, but I'm actually surprised I don't see it here. But yeah, Khazard really likes crit because it does the freezes on the crits. And you also see anything does CC. There's a lot of places you could cut down in the middle. And Stall Comp, I digress, can also like pivot into a lot of other different teams. Yeah. Very strong. The idea is that you kind of stall with Talene and Flora, two heroes that can really remain alive. Even Talene is not necessary here. Orthos can fill a role. Where's my boy Orthos here? Arty, we gotta have a talk. Orthos is a stall hero. Where is he? Oh, okay. Arty put him under optimal investment. Okay, fine, then we can be friends. Okay, this is cool. Zafral is very expensive, but also very strong because he can enjoy a lot of CC here. This fallen out of grace in PvP, but it's still incredibly awesome in campaign. Sometimes you see Skreg in one of these slots too. Yeah, we see Skreg over here. Yeah, but overall the idea is just you keep something alive. I've even seen Endgame campaign Lucius used here, but I gotta stop talking about those niches, man. People will get me wrong. People are gonna build Lucius now and blame me for it. Titus, I'm looking at you. So as Arty says here, Flora gotta have that investment. If you're working on Flora, you gotta do that investment and get her any of those teammates. She will work well. I think Theowen is underestimated in this slot. I've even done the crime of underestimating her in that slot myself. I think she's pretty strong, even though she's face palming, and anything that can stay alive while Flora is doing its thing is gonna be incredible. Ezio, a very interesting niche here. The idea is Ezio is a dodge tank and he can execute anything that Flora puts below the threshold. Just her damage output is insane enough to enable this team all on her own. Where's Odin, by the way? Oh, there's Odin. Portal Party. Alright, so this is... I don't know if I'm the most qualified because I haven't used that team as much, but obviously what you see, the idea is that Pipa and Odin keep parking those portals and kind of teleporting enemies away. Do ultimate CC. Now, Odin with the buff can carry on his own. It's really fun. And those heroes that you use are going to be heroes that you usually don't see used as much, as Arty says over here very accurately. But there's a couple issues that you do gotta notice. You gotta invest into all these heroes and know what you're doing, because there's a lot of cores that won't work. This one has a higher skill ceiling. Like if you use Horn, for example, and all these heroes, you really gotta understand what you're going into. Mizok twins, by the way. Do we have both Mizok and twins here? I'm disappointed. I even did the viewer highlights and I'm not seeing Mizophan twins, but nonetheless, very strong core. Can go with a lot of things. The idea is that you can sometimes pull off incredible CC with just these 2 portals. Not as much used in later chapters, so don't overhype it too much. Don't just spec everything and just throw all your resources into that. But an incredible thing if you're looking to spice it up and get through the endgame in the nicest way. AMB, our local expert on that. Check out the podcast if you want a deeper overview of it by the man himself that kind of propagated. As you see, Arty also a very wholesome content creator, credited MBS proper. Lastly, we see standard Aaron and we also have standard Daimon. Both of these are just going to be the way that you pivot from the Aaron, as we talked about, into the late game. So Aaron can really work well with anything later. But in the early game, you just have those signature carries you really want. Rowan, for example, just too strong. Later usually finds himself on different teams. But in the early game, you just want Aaron Rowan, and Daimon is going to be the same too. So yeah, Daimon install anything that can kind of tank. Both of these can work very well in the early game. I like the fact that Arty is still seeing the early game players, the FTP players, and kind of mentioning to them what's best to grab. But I hope this overview helped you. I really liked Arty's guide. It was nice. I personally think it's really good, like you could really see. The only thing that I did miss is like the key hero positioning, the stuff that I tried to mention on this video. There's also little pieces of critique of heroes that are missing, some niches, but overall an incredible resource. I'll link it down below. Definitely check it out. I hope this helped you. All the people that keep asking me, Linker, what's my formation gonna be? What do I want to grab to complete those formations you talked about in the ultimate tier list? What are the full list of alternatives, the 15 formations that essentially pivot into something that resembles kind of 10 or 11 essentially? That was an overview of that. And with that, I hope you people are happy with those videos. Let me know below. Thank you so much another time to Arty for this awesome, incredible guide that gave me permission to kind of overview. And for now, I've been Linker. Peace.